Good morning, happy Monday, and welcome to the 23rd episode of Coffee Talk Live. This is the show where my guests and I explore what it means to live a sustainable, healthy life as mothers, as women in our homes and in the community, but most importantly for ourselves. I'm your host, Connie Pastorius, founder of Pastorius Fitness, which is online coaching for overwhelmed moms who are ready to get stronger, gain energy, and reclaim their health. I'm also the founder and woman in charge here at the Strong as a Mother, Happy and Healthy Living Facebook group, whose mission is to be the village for parents to feel supported so they can live happy and healthy lives while raising happy and healthy babies. So do me a favor, please drop a 1 or a good morning in the comments if you're watching live with us, or a 2 if you're catching the replay. And please, either way, don't be shy. I want to hear your voice in this conversation. And if you're watching on YouTube later, click the link in the description of this video to join this amazing community of busy but healthy-minded moms just like you. And remember to like, share, subscribe, so I know that you want to keep getting more of this awesome content each and every week. Wow, I'm caffeinated today. Let's get down to why we're here on today's episode. I'm so excited to have this conversation because this amazing woman and once fellow Astoria mom is a psychotherapist who helps people heal through breathwork and somatic experience, which we will talk about in a bit. So please welcome to the show, Jessica Garet. Jessica, good morning.
Hi.
Hey, welcome. Greetings from Florida. I'm so glad we're at least in the same time zone still, yeah?
Yes. Cheers to that.
Yes. And what's in the cup today? What are you having?
This is like 3-hour-old coffee.
Isn't it always? We were just talking about this. It's either lukewarm, freezing cold, or we left it in the microwave and never finished drinking it.
Exactly. You put it in there and then like the kids say something, you get distracted. And then I'm like, oh, right, coffee.
I feel like I relate to Doug from Up, who has the squirrel moments. The squirrels. There's always a squirrel somewhere for me to get distracted from. And then I'm like, wow, why am I so tired?
Yeah.
I go to put the green beans in the microwave and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why. Anyways, how's life in Florida? You tell us a little bit about your your moving experience, because you just left, I feel like, not too long ago.
Yeah. So for those of you, obviously I'm getting to meet your community a little bit more today, and you guys get to meet me. I was born and raised in Astoria. So I'm like hitting 47 this year, but most of my life, all of my life, I lived in Astoria. And so I used to joke with my husband, because I actually even grew up in the house that I grew up in. I moved back into and raised my babies in there. And so, but I would say to my husband, like, babe, I love Astoria, but I can't die in Astoria. Like, I want another adventure. I want to start again. And so COVID happened, and obviously that shifted all of our lives. And I've been working as a psychotherapist, and I had 2 offices, one in Astoria, one in Manhattan. I had to close them both down. I started working online, and then I started making like new offerings because I realized there was a lot of need. And then I saw that I could just kind of do everything online, and the kids were online. And then I was like, well, now I can kind of dream of something else. So my family lives down here in Fort Lauderdale, and we were here for the summer, and our life just kind of felt really different in a way that I really wanted and the kids really needed. And so we were like, all right, let's do this. So we literally made the decision in the summer of last summer to put our house up for sale. We sold it in December. We packed up all of our stuff and moved out here February. So we've only been here a few months.
Yeah.
And that was insane.
And do you feel like, are you still kind of like unpacking and getting comfortable in your home, or do you feel like this is my place? You feel like grounded and...
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question because, right, we're going to be talking about the body and like, our somatic experience. I have moments where I can feel like I've arrived and I feel more settled in my body. Definitely the unpacking and not having things in boxes has helped. But there's still a lot to feel into. So like not having a big sense of community yet will help me. We'll talk about like, maybe we'll get into it, or maybe I'll just mention it now, that part of what helps us feel kind of more in our bodies, more embodied, is connection. Not just like where we're our inner experience, but our community. And when we lose that, or we have to start anew, it can take a real long time before like our nervous system feels settled. So I don't have that yet. I'm working on that. But I'm trying to be gentle because we've literally only been here a few months, and I've had to figure other things out, like how do I get my kids in school? How do I get back to work? How do we unpack a house? How do we make sure that like the house is functional? So I think a year, maybe I'm giving myself to feel like I can find my community.
Yeah. And I feel like it'd be hard to even feel that sense of belonging and groundedness until you understand like the logistics of where you're at right now. Exactly. So it's all in good time. And it's funny that like you, a born and raised Astorian, relocated as an adventure. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, and 5-ish years ago, we got this opportunity to pursue one of my husband's like dream jobs in New York, and it was just us and the dogs. So we're like, why not? So we up and moved, and Astoria in our little apartment became the first place since the home I grew up in that I felt like this is my space. I belong here. That really like establishing my root chakra in somewhere. And I've lived in like 7 places since I lived in my first home growing up. And this was the one that I was like, I'll die here. I want to like, this is where I want to be forever. So it's just really cool. Like I'm stepping in.
I love hearing that. I actually, even as you said it, one of the things, like when I work with people, when they tell me something like that, one of the ways we would work together would be to be like, as you tell me that, even you identifying your root chakra, what do you notice in your body that kind of like identifies that feels like you're like, I'll die here. This is where I belong. And like our body responds to those words in certain ways, right? So like part of somatic experiences is like learning how to track like, like I can feel my feet more, right? Or I can feel my back more. I don't know, I got curious as you were saying it.
And like this is, I mean, it all really ties into the conversation we're having today. So like being able to, I mean, I think lockdown really, really brought to light how people felt in their homes. And they either realize like, I have so much shit in this house. Like, why am I collecting all these things? Do they provide value? And a lot of people went Marie Kondo and was like, does this make me feel good? Can I let go of this? And really making their little space, whatever size it is, really theirs, and feeling like they belong in their one little safe bubble, or deciding like, I think this is a great opportunity to find another adventure, like you said.
Yeah. It's true.
So let's segue. I'm the worst at segueing. So here's a bad segue into talking about a little bit about what a body-centered psychotherapist means. Like what is that as a definition?
Sure. So I've been a psychotherapist, which basically my licensure is I'm a social worker. I've been a social worker since 2004. And I worked in many different ways in my career. So I've worked on inpatient psychiatric units. I worked in outpatient mental health clinics in the Bronx and in Queens. I then went on to move on to working in NYU and Pace University, and I worked mostly in crisis management, working with young adults who were survivors of trauma, survivors of sexual assault. And during that time, I started to recognize that my training had kind of left pieces out. A lot of the training that I had received was very focused on the analytic piece of things, our mind, our cognition. But something felt really missing to me. And so then something felt missing to me personally. I mean, part of why I became interested in doing this work was because I had gone to therapy myself at a young age. And I was inspired by the person who was my therapist. And I was like, I don't do what she does. But I realized in all of my own healing work and then the stuff I was offering, I was like, I'm not really, like, there's something missing and I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there's got to be more to this than just like being with somebody's thoughts. And so that led me to getting trained in somatic experiencing and breath work. And both of those practices really emphasize that all of our lived experience lives in our body.
Yeah.
And shows up in our body and is communicated and expressed by our body. And our thoughts are kind of a byproduct of that. But it's not where the healing happens. But I had to kind of experience it myself to really be able to feel the impact of it. So through my trainings, because they're very experiential, it's experiential work, which just really means is the only way you're going to be able to do the work is if you're doing it on yourself, if you're actually exposed to it. So the sort of premise of anything like somatic experience, any of these experiential therapies that focus on the body is the idea that trauma at its core is not necessarily what happens to us, but what happens inside of us as a result of the event. And when we think about trauma, a lot of people also think about like, well, you know, the big T traumas, like the big, for some of us, a lot of us have lived through like really big events, significant events that have shaped us. But there's also the little T traumas, which are just what the kind of like way to understand it is anything that had you disconnect from yourself. Anything that had you choose, what they talk about the two essential needs are attachment and authenticity. And our human needs, attachment, obviously we see it in our babies, right? They won't survive unless they are properly attached to us, right? We all come into this world as an essential need that we have is to be able to be properly cared for. And then there's the piece of authenticity. Somewhere along the line, if depending on our upbringing, we might sacrifice authenticity just to stay attached, right? So like we can talk about it in more depth, but basically the idea that like in some homes, your full expression of yourself isn't really sort of, there's a message you receive somewhere along the way that your full expression of yourself isn't going to be held and contained the way it needs to be by your caregivers. So you'll sacrifice that in order to just feel like you'll just stay loved, right? And you'll just stay cared for. And that disconnection from yourself can build over time. And that can be a little T trauma, which can feel like a big T. You get to your middle of your life, or you get to like your teens, or you get to your 20s, and you're like, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I? I'm lost.
Yeah.
So the trauma, the whole somatic experiencing piece of things is working with how that shows up in the body, where that disconnection lives, where those little T's or the big T traumas show up in the body, and giving that time and space, which it sounds abstract, but it's really about privileging the communication of the body. That's a lot, isn't it? Sorry.
No. Oh my gosh. I was eating it all up. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to like rewind on, but so the first thing would be like, throughout my yoga teacher training experience, I came across two books that were like really helpful, and I've referred them out a lot. One of them was Your Body Speaks Your Mind. And completely like in line with this, it talks about how you can manifest like your physical pain and your physical like discomforts through whatever traumas that you are working through, or whatever words or thoughts that you're having. Like if you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and then that translates to upper back pain and stuff like that. And the other one it's called Born to Win. And I can't remember the author, but it talks about healing our trauma and saying that like trauma starts at birth, and whatever happens throughout our lives gets ingrained into our unconscious, and it just becomes, who we are. And it's part of our jobs to bring it from our unconscious to our conscious by recognizing like how it's affected us. And through lots of different practices. Those are two of my favorite books that really transform the way I see.
I'm going to write them down because I've got lots of books, but I don't know those. So Born to Win.
Born to Win. It's a really weird title for what it does, but it has these little prompts in every chapter that says like, stop and think, like, what happened at this age? Like what comes up for you whenever you think about, the most emotionally impactful part of your childhood, or stuff like that is really cool. And talking about Where did you end up? We were just talking. Oh, yes. You were talking about sacrificing your authenticity for attachment. Almost every conversation I have with one of my clients who are moms, it goes a little something like, I've sacrificed who I was before I was a mom in the name of being a good mom, and to no fault of anyone's own, but they wake up one day and they don't recognize who they are in the mirror. Or if I say, like, why don't you go take yourself on a date? Like, what do you like to do by yourself? And they're like, I have no clue anymore. Yeah. So we go into this period of exploration where take yourself out on a date, see what you like, introduce yourself to yourself and see what happens. And, redeveloping and establishing this relationship with who you are by just recognizing, like, this is the person I am now. And you don't have to wait to love yourself till you become some other version that you want to be. But it's a really challenging realization that we've made these sacrifices, one for the other, and then here we are. So without me trailing off too far, let's go into the breath, because I'm a yoga instructor. I tell people to breathe so many times. Like, it's funny to me when I have to remind people to breathe, because it's like you do it all the time, but then I'm like, deep breath in, okay, exhale it out. So, I mean, anyone who's taken a yoga class has done this and has heard the word breathe or the prompt breathe, and they have this really relaxing experience. So I want to think and go into with you a little bit as to why breathing has this magical power over us, and how we can kind of channel it and start to, learn more about what we can do for ourselves through the breath to feel better.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love everything you shared. And love that period too, of just like as moms, recognizing that, again, attachment versus authenticity, and getting to a place in our lives as mothers where we begin to stop and slow down and ask ourselves the who am I question, right? And also that I thought it was beautiful how you said, there's a compassionate way in which you were kind of describing it, where, and I think this ties into the breath, what we do, especially when it comes to being mothers, is that we choose, we become more inclined into the survival piece of ourselves, a sort of more reptilian part of our functioning when we become a mother, right? We're like mama bears, and we're all about like trying to do what's right and take care. And when our body is functioning in that way, our breath is a lot harder to access. So part of like when I work with people is to recognize, like, if our breath is constricted, it's for a reason, right? Likely something's happening inside the body that is not allowing more expansiveness of breath. So like you might be stressed out, or you might have a lot on your mind, or you might be you might not be conscious of the fact that there are muscles that are constricting because your body's working hard to sort of make less space inside.
Is that a protective response to shallow, like make your breathing more shallow?
Yeah. So when our muscles constrict, it makes less, we have less oxygen going through our body. And as a result, again, it's really the body's preparation to make a choice, figure out, orient towards where's the threat, or where's the stress response comes on really high for us. And so all of our muscles constrict, kind of ready to fight or ready to flee. It's going to make our breath much more shallow. And we have something called the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, right? You probably know this as a trainer, right? And so parasympathetic is rest and relax. Yeah. We're going to have much more access to breath. And sympathetic, obviously a lot of constriction. It's our get ready to fight or flee, get ready to run. And there's just a lot more constriction in the body. So there's a lot less breath. So when I work with people, I know in yoga and stuff like that, and I've done it too, I always am interested when someone says, take a deep breath, because I go, oh yeah, my body can't, not right now. I've got to do something different in order to get there. So when I'm working with people, either in SC and somatic experiencing, or when we do breath work, it's kind of honoring, where are you now in your breath, right? Is your breath really shallow? Okay. Let's find somewhere in your body that doesn't feel constricted, right? So let's often the way to get a fuller breath in is to notice where in the body there is less gripping. And I often make my clients, and we laugh about it, but often our butt is a really great place if we're seated. It's a really great place to like land and notice. So if I'm noticing, like even right now as I'm talking to you, I'm like, yeah, I'm a little bit more activated because we're kind of like chatting together and I'm on camera. And so I can notice that like there's a little bit less quality of like depth to my breath. But if I wanted to, I could kind of just bring all of my attention and all of my awareness to my seat. And as I do that, I can invite in more breath. So breath is healing. Breath is healing. It oxygenates our blood. It sends signals to our body that we are safe. Mm. And that's really the primary reason why it's healing. Because as soon as my body gets the message that it's safe, as soon as my body begins to understand that more oxygen can flow through it, all my energy, like even just that one breath, has me feeling my legs and my feet more. And so I know there's energy flowing through me. It's not, my muscles are no longer constricted. And when we begin to allow more breath into our body and that safety mechanism gets turned on inside, then we also have more expansion, not only like muscular expansion, but then this is something I've posted about, and there's something that happens internally when we are feeling safe and expanded that allows us to tap into something more creative, right? Like we start to think like, I have choice. There are possibilities. I can move. I can let something go. I can let something in.
Right, because we're not in that constant state of that part of our brain that's just like survive, protect yourself.
Exactly.
Don't think about anything else. Like this is what's most important. Let's go into our butts a little more. You brought that up, and I really love that for a couple of reasons. And I know what I said. I heard it.
I'm with you. I love it
too. Yeah. So I want to go into this a bit because it has so much applications to my work as a coach and your work with breathing and our stress response and where we hold tension. So first of all, our anus has so many nerve endings. I think it has like one of the most the highest amount of nerve endings in the body. So whenever we're clenching and in that constant state of clench, including moms who just think they need to do Kegels all day long when that's not necessarily the solution. But if they're giving themselves that constant state of contraction, or if when you clench your butt cheeks, like that's your kind of like protective response when you're nervous, that's putting these muscles in a constant state of tension. So what that ends up doing is changing your structure of your hips. So if you have, that can cause you to tuck your tailbone under and have your pelvic bowl in a posterior tilt, and that affects your whole spine going all the way up, and it makes it even harder to relax. And that becomes something that we have to work with either with me or with Dr. Helene, our physical therapist. But noticing that, I can't just say, hey, relax your butt. We have to talk about and understand why that's your response to stress or to tension. And, going farther into, I want my brain to work because this is really interesting. So we were talking about the tension that we're holding. Oh yeah. So you were saying like, it's hard for someone to just tell you to take a deep breath when you can't. And this is why the first sentence I wrote when I posted about this conversation we're having is that if I'm pissed off or if I'm really worked up and my husband's like, Connie, like calm down. And I'm like, no, you calm down. Like it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if you go into like a yoga class or a class that just says like, relax your body, relax your arms, relax your chest. And you're like, I don't know how. One thing that I started to do and to change in the way that I teach my class is that I invite you to soften. Yeah. Find something to soften, which was similar to what you were saying. And I took your virtual breathing class, and that was at a very, very, very hard part of my life. It was right after we shacked up here for the winter, thinking like, oh, we have more space, but it was also like a barren, snow-covered tundra. So like we were stuck in this space. Lots of other things going on, but long story short is when I took your breathing class, like that was insanely difficult for me to just stop and be aware of my breathing.
Yep.
And
in those breathing classes, those are specifically, so I do a breathwork offering. It's a virtual offering. It's once a month I offer it at this point. I started it actually during COVID, offering it virtually. I was doing it with clients privately. That's a very specific, so I often tell people, look, if you're going to come and do this, come in with, again, sort of compassionate curiosity. I try to preface, here's what I'm going to instruct you to do. We're going to do 45 minutes of breathing. It's probably about the hardest thing you'll ever try to do, sustain something like this, right? We're going to do 35 minutes of active breath and 15 minutes of restorative breath. Those 35 minutes of active breath, I don't expect you to breathe this way the whole entire time. It's incredibly cathartic. So there's, again, that it's a sympathetic breath. It's not a parasympathetic breath. It's not like let's zen out and chill and just like, hang out with like a real easy breathing. No, this is like a 3-part active breath, belly, chest, exhale. It's meant to move energy. When anyone does it the first time with me, I often, if we get to talk post it or before it, or even at some point, I'm telling you during it, drop out of it if it feels like too much. Just come into your normal breath, because what we're asking your body to do right now is hard. The benefits after can feel incredibly great. And I've had clients who've come in and only done 5 minutes and then just stayed the rest of the time and like did the prompts, like the laughing and the crying, the screaming. There's crying in there too. But, there's a part where we get to scream. There's a part where we get to prompt ourselves to laugh. It's really all about moving energy, but it's a really hard practice. Part of what's great, or what I have found unbelievably healing about it, is a way for me to be with myself that doesn't require me to talk. I don't have to tell anybody what's going on. I get to just be with my body. I get to be with my breath, and I get to like ride out that experience and have it be whatever it is. So yeah, that's a little different when I work with people just in SE, just with the body. We're doing something much slower paced, much more intentional. We're working on like, what's the stressor you're coming with today? And let's just be in relationship to it with the body. Let's see what the body has to say. So it's a little different.
I gotta tell you a funny story about like laughing and crying and like catharsis. I was in India for 3 months to add on some yoga teacher training. It was a tantra yoga, so it was like a 2.5 to 3 hour super chill, super slow, very meditative yoga practice. We had the asanas, we had the movements and all that stuff, and then like shavasana is pretty much like, they never get us, in that practice, you don't get taken out of shavasana. You stay there as long as you like. Okay. And then eventually we go eat dinner. But with this practice, we were hanging out in shavasana for a good while, and everybody was in such a good state. Like the weather was perfect. We were just in that zone. And then someone farted. And again, like we're on a shala, or we're on like a rooftop. It's covered. There's like 50 of us. And then, so someone let out a fart, like somewhere far over on the other side of where I was at. And then one person started laughing. And then the whole freaking room started cracking up, completely unprompted, totally unprompted. It was the deepest, like belly laugh I'd ever experienced in my life. And it went on for like a couple minutes. But what ended up happening was I went from this laughing with my cheeks like hurting to crying. Yeah. Completely unrelated to the fart. But we were just like, I was experiencing such like saturated amounts of emotion. And it went into this crying, not in like a sadness, but just in a release, a relief. I don't know what it was, but this was like the most beautiful moment from the silliest little thing.
I love that. Yeah,
it was one of my favorite parts of the whole trip.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how can you not laugh if someone farts and like it's very like farts are funny.
They're funny.
Yeah, but also like it makes sense, you know, again, like that's part of why the prompts for laughing or crying or screaming is, and even I say this with clients too, like our tears don't have to mean we're sad. It's just the motion of energy, right? Like it's just another place of like another point of release, right? So energy moves through this all the time, and tears might be one way we do that. Laughter is another way, right? So it's like, you know, your belly starts to go, and then like all of this like energy starts to move through you. So that makes sense, but that's hysterical. I love that.
I know, it's the best experience from my yoga training. So yeah, so like continuing to go into this, you know, breathing stuff, because, you know, we talked about crying for a second, and I know every person here has experienced crying so strongly, so intensely that you can't breathe. Yeah. Like it's like that really, really, really shallow breathing, and then the second, like your mom tells you, or the second you just take a deep breath, that it immediately like gets you back down.
Yeah.
At least a little bit. And like how is this happening? How is this happening? And like, just like the really abridged version. And then I'd love to go into a couple tips that moms listening, watching can do for themselves if they get into one of these states where they just need to feel grounded again, or need to feel like they can take at least a deeper breath or find some relief.
All right. So how is it happening? I don't mean like here's the thing for me. I'm an intuitive person when it comes to understanding the science behind it. So I'm definitely not going to like sit here and tell you this sort of physiological science behind it, because I'm not so sure that I would do that justice. But when I hear you kind of give this description of like all of us at times, you know, feeling that the sort of intensity, the surge, the wave of emotion that comes through us, and sometimes in the form of tears, and we sort of can't catch our breath. That often what helps us regulate that, sort of like to slow that peak down a little bit is, and so you described like the mom kind of coming over, or your mom kind of coming over and being like, okay, right? There's something about not only that relational, so you know, in my training, we talk a lot about we have self-regulation and co-regulation, right? And co-regulation is something actually primarily, like we can't go from an activated nervous system to a regulated nervous system without co-regulation to some degree, right? Especially children. We'll see it in children, right? I said this to a client the other day. My son was having an absolute utter meltdown, as he can and does often, depending on what's going on. And when I am more regulated in my nervous system, I can be with him differently. And this happened to be a morning where I could be with him differently, and he was really losing it. And I just sat down next to him and I put like my hand on his back, and I was like, okay, babe. Yeah, you're upset. Every damn time I do that, every time he's like, and he slows down and he breathes and goes, yeah. And if I don't do that, the heat rises, the intensity rises, the dysregulation rises. So when I heard you kind of give that example, and I think, well, how does that happen? What I'm hearing there is this really what it is that the nervous system gets some level of containment to that big peak that's happening, that big activation. That containment's coming from another person, which is just kind of like a soft, like gentle sort of validation of something big is happening here, but we can be with it. It's going to be okay. There's another side to this, right? Sometimes for us as adults, we don't have that other always available. So a lot of my work with clients who are adults mostly is using our body to help regulate when we kind of reach a real big peak of emotion. And so it kind of leads into the thing you're asking for, the things that I will do with people. You can notice if a big emotion is overcoming you, many things can happen. Often what's happening is from the torso up. It's all connected to our ventral and our vagal system, basically our nervous system. So all of these signals are going off in our body that are causing big constriction, heat. You'll maybe potentially even taken out of your body. So there's a thing, you know, obviously dissociation, where we just kind of leave the body because it's just like way too much to be inside of it. Our eye focus of our eyes will narrow, so we won't really be able to see the greater landscape. We're really just like, it's almost tunnel vision. Mm-hmm. Our jaw clenching, our shoulder clenching. Is that a word? Clench?
Sure.
Our shoulders might rise. Our butt might clench, our calf, you know, everything starts to constrict. And so one of the things, if you're in a high peak activation, the easiest thing you can try to do is find yourself a window. Okay, find yourself a window. Sit down if you can. Make sure you have a backrest. Put your feet on the ground and look out. And look out as far as you can. Literally find whatever, if it's a building, really ask your eyes to search for the furthest point in the sky. And then as you're doing that, feel your feet on the ground. And just keep looking and keep looking and take in the color. Like I'm looking right now and I see there's a tree and there's a little bit of a breeze and it's kind of a darker green and there's clouds. It's a kind of overcast day. And I'm gonna just keep asking my eyes to take in information. So part again of what this is called, it's called orienting in some degree. What we're trying to do is, if too much is happening in the body, we can't often find a safe place inside the body. So we ask the eyes to help us orient to something outside the body. That'll help to settle. That'll help to kind of move things into a more grounded experience, right? So I'm focusing on my feet while I'm also using my eyes to find something outside my window that at least takes me out of like what's happening in here for a moment.
Yeah.
So that's one way we can do it. I also do an exercise where we do orienting to the space that we have, right? So I would like ask somebody to go, okay, like there's a lot going on inside your body. Let's try looking around and pick a color. And I want you to take your eyes, your hips, your head and your neck, and I want you to slowly take a look around the room and count every single thing in the room that matches that color. And that's another way to orient the nervous system. Again, all we're trying to do is bring some level of information into the nervous system that gives you just that much information that says you're okay. And lets in a little bit more breath.
Okay. That answers the question of like, what is this doing? Like, why do we need to see something that's blue? And you're just like looking for that littlest reason to be like, Connie, you're okay.
Yeah, I mean, literally, we're just trying to interrupt the signal. Something's happened inside that has us feeling too much, too fast, right? Because that's normal. As human beings, something can happen. We can get activated and triggered. Sometimes we don't even know why. Mm-hmm. But the nervous system is responding as if there's a threat. And it's sending off all the alarms. And it might not be wrong. There might not actually be a fire, but somewhere the system believes there is, because something happened in your interaction with someone, or in something you read, or in something that just happened that overwhelmed our bodies. So the body's responding as it would if it was overwhelmed. So we don't necessarily want to shame ourselves for that, but we do want to be able to then somewhere come into like, and in this moment, I can look around and I can see that there's like a bunch of other things in here with me. I can send a signal to my body that I'm relatively safe. I'm relatively safe. I can then interrupt that threat signal just a little to get more breath in. I can use touch to kind of give my muscles like a check-in and just say like, okay, you guys are working really hard. It's okay to slow down just a little bit. So touch is also a really nice way to like, you know, giving your muscles a squeeze. And acknowledging their hard work, but asking if it's okay if like maybe they not work so hard just in this moment.
And maybe that would help, or that would be a good option for people who really like hugs. maybe?
Yeah, there's a thing called a self hug that we do. Often I do with clients, where, depending on our boob size, it's like, I say like, yeah, exactly. You play with what feels right, or boob hug. But doing a nice hug and then feeling your spine against the chair and feeling your feet. And then and this is what we do a lot with SE, is like, nothing might happen at first, but just stay for a little bit. And just notice what happens next. Like really feel into how the hands touch your skin. Maybe notice what part of the body is like receiving the hug and is softening. And notice where it's tight, because not every part of the body is going to just get relaxed, and that's okay, but you can kind of just bring your awareness to both. And then if we stay, just kind of like what you did with your example of like if you stay with something long enough, it often moves into something else. So like when you're talking about that, laughter turning into tears, right? Like if we stay with this long enough, after a while, like what was originally like me gripping my arm then becomes me like softening. If we stay long enough in something, it starts to move, it starts to change, and our body starts to respond.
Oh, I feel like this is like awesome self-love practice as well, to actually I talk a lot about like looking in the mirror and like meeting yourself, like seeing your eyes, smiling, saying I love you, or just hello. But really to like feel yourself and to like hold yourself and be like, oh, you're the best, or like you're doing a good job, or like you deserve a hug even from yourself. Like that's, I love it so much.
It's beautiful. Thanks for reminding me about the hug. And also how beautiful too, because I say this a lot too. Watch what messages show up when you do that, right? So the words that just came to you are so important. Like, you deserve a hug. Thank you so much. I love you. Like all these spontaneous affirmations that like, had someone said, say this to yourself, it wouldn't feel the same.
You're like, no, that's dumb.
But if you stay with it, and you let your body tell you what it has to say in response to that gesture, the words just come in, and it has way more impact and way more like ability to heal and make you soften than anything anyone could tell you to say to yourself.
Yes, especially if you catch yourself saying like less than nice things to yourself a lot, out loud or in your mind, to feel like what it tastes like, what it sounds like to say those nice things to yourself. And that can bring up some emotions too. But this is like my beef with the word mindfulness meets where like what I really think it means, and where the value really is being present in what is happening and observing without judgment how you're responding. Like that, I think, is a really valuable and powerful example of mindfulness, not just the mindfulness that people say, like, I don't know, sit and enjoy each bite of soup. Like mindfulness is like a really big buzzword right now. And I think it can get like weakened a little bit whenever it's just like, oh, be mindful, be present, be, but to really apply it and to recognize, and that's work, that's self-work, that if you want to change, if you want to understand yourself more, if you don't want to get stuck in these feelings of not being in control, not feeling comfortable where you are with yourself and your place in the world. If you want to start working on that, actually recognizing and being conscious of what's coming up, and then having resources like you to help translate or to help guide, so you can actually make change with these things that are coming up. Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't do the healing work I've done for myself. I couldn't do on my own. Like that's again part of the need for co-regulation, right? The part of what I loved about the working with my own, you know, therapists or healers, different healers. I mean, that's the other thing about healing too. Healing, we all have this disconnection we have to heal from and return to, like what is our wholeness inside. And you can do it so many different ways. So I've watched some of the people you have had on who have like, you know, energy and tarot and all. There's so many beautiful ways out there to like reconnect with yourself, right? And so I offer one of ways, you know, and I hold space in that way. But I do think it's about reconnecting to yourself and coming in with like really like, again, compassionate curiosity about like, what's my body trying to tell me, right? Like what's in here? And if I slow down and listen, how might I make space for that? And how might I relate to it differently? You know, how can I notice these words that I often use against this body and transmute them into something different, right? Like how can I, if I took my time with it, how does that shift from like something that feels really painful to something really beautiful? But I do think most of us need at least someone holding space for us in that way, kind of like cheering us along or just like saying like, wait, hold on right there. What was that? Take your time with that. Notice that. See what happens when you do, right? I think that's the beautiful part of it. I feel honored often with my clients that they, you know, let me do that with them and that it gets to be this creative space to get to know themselves.
Absolutely. Especially if you're one of those women who take on that matriarch role and feel like you are bearing all of everybody's burdens and taking on everything, to have that one person that's not just like, you know, the expert in their field, but they don't have that, you know, emotional past, like a parent who you might not feel as comfortable exploring these kinds of things with, or your spouse, your partner. Like my spiritual journey is not the same as my husband's, and he is not my spiritual guide by any stretch. But yeah, like even coaches, even people like us, like we have guides, we have people who help us navigate our own stuff, because I cannot do everything. I don't pretend to in any capacity. So how can people reach out to you if they want to learn more, or if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, they can email me. I've got a bunch of different sites. But the easiest way is just info@jessicagaret.com. And then my website dedicated specifically to breathwork and somatic healing is Aire Healing. So that's AIRE Healing. My parents are from South America. And so when COVID happened and I wanted to create a space just for breathwork, I was like trying to come up with a name for it. And I came up with aire, which means, aire in Spanish means air. But it also kind of means like essence. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to make aire. So airehealing.com is fully dedicated just to like, if you want to know more about what breathwork is, if you want to know more about somatic healing, you can go on there. And I do monthly circles. So we're probably I'll make one for July sometime soon that are like Zoom circles, like the one you took part in. And and I also say with somatic stuff, people often ask me, I do traditional therapy in its like traditional form, like once a week with clients, but with somatic healing, it's not something that we have to work continuously together on. So if like there's something that you're finding yourself stuck with, or if there's like a big event, or there's like, let's say for like surgery, or if there's something that's coming up that feels like impactful, or something that's happened that's having like a great impact on your body, I sometimes work with people like for 2 or 3 sessions. You know, we just do a little bit of work.
That's awesome.
Not something you have to do weekly.
That's really great. And you're also in the group. So I'm sure people could find you in the Strong as a Mother group. And I'm sure they could also comment under this conversation if they have questions. You can definitely reach out.
Answer anything.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jessica, you're the best. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation.
Me too.
Normally these are a half an hour long, but like I feel like, but I felt like we were just really getting into it, and I feel like I could talk to you about this all day long. And please come back.
I would be thrilled.
Yes, I wanna hear more about your progression as a Floridian and and hearing more. If you have anything good to share.
Yeah. I hope to.
You're by the water, yeah?
I'm 5 blocks from the ocean, so I'm not going to complain. Although I know we're going to go and I have a client soon, but we have a pool. So again, I'm all about the water. We started talking about water. I'm like so happy to be by water, but we also have this gorgeous tree that hangs, our neighbor's tree, over our pool. And I hadn't had an issue with it until iguanas started crawling up it and pooing in our pool.
Ah.
Yeah, so now I have to deal with iguana poop and figuring out how to trim back that tree so iguanas can't poop in our pool. It's like, gross.
You thought you escaped the weird neighborhood stuff when you left Queens, but no.
Like, I left squirrels and mice, and we had termites
chickens
back there. Yeah. Oh, I didn't have chickens.
There's chickens in, no, not me, not in, somebody in Astoria has chickens, but I've definitely gone to the Bronx and they've literally been crossing the road. Like, anything in New York, anything is possible.
Yeah, anything is possible. Well, I have iguanas pooping from a tree into my pool. So
that's something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you. It's so good to end on a poop note.
Yeah. I don't even know where to go from there. No, that's hilarious. We're moms. Poop always comes up some way or another. So cheers for an amazing conversation today. And everybody who is listening, thank you so much for joining in. If you have questions, let's keep the conversation going in the comments. I'd love to hear your takeaways, your thoughts, if you've had somatic experience in your life before and how it went. So other than that, please remember, like, share, subscribe, invite your moms to this village. They are all very welcome. I can't wait to meet you and every mom that comes into the group. So until next week, stay strong, stay caffeinated, and I will see you in the group. Thanks, everyone. Have a great, amazing week.
Thanks, Connie.
Bye.